I have one more question within that your career, and that is, why do they call you the legend?
Uh, it was kind of a thing that kind of followed me throughout my career, and some people, uh, new guys, didn't even know my real name initially. They were just introduced in the hallway. Hey, there goes the legend. And I was thinking about to where that kind of started, and I think the origin was nothing historical or anything. It was a softball game um, between the fire department and the police department. So it was the original Guns and Hoses softball
Yeah.
game. And maybe when I was getting introduced, and now coming up to bat, Mike the Legend Baldwin. But I did have a reputation of being a go getter. And part of that was I was trying to be the best. I was trying to make a name for myself and be the best officer out there. But what I did a little differently than most is I started talking to the bad guys, getting to know them. And when I got to know them, guess what they told me? They told me
Yeah.
about other bad guys. And so I started learning so much information about the streets, and I was making so many arrests that this persona of, hey, he's a legend, um, kind of followed me. And I don't want this to sound prideful, because it's easy to sound prideful. But I had asked some guys, friends of mine, when I, retired, I'm like, hey, this is what I was called. This was the nickname and stuff like that. When did you first hear it, and what did you think about it? And one guy said, hey, I could always go to you for help. And this was pretty important. This is one of those five guys type deal. He
Yeah.
said, you're the one guy I knew who would lay down his life to get me home to my children. And I'm like, that's pretty legendary. You think about that. Um, Another guy said, you always had a plan, and we were following you because we trusted you. And so that was reaffirming. And then another buddy said, you always did what was right, despite what everybody thought, including command staff. And you weren't a brown noser, and through it all, you were able to keep a life work balance. And so that's what made you the legend in my mind. But I've never really told these guys that they pushed me to get better.
Mhm.
So, because there was a handful of officers and guys that I trained that were good, and I wanted to keep up with them, but I wanted to stay a step ahead of them. And so they pushed me. So they're partially responsible for, making the legend. And so guys like Brandon Lindsay and Mike Gregory, Jeremy Atwell, Jesse Galaz, these were guys that I trained, Adam Layton, Richard Yost, Joe Groover, um, Tyler Johnson, Devin Lejander, Lucas Jensen. These are the guys that were going to be in my group of five. Obviously, I named more than five guys, but they had different spans throughout the career. But at the
Yeah.
time, there was a handful of them that if I knew we were going to get into something bad and I needed to call a handful of guys, there was a couple that I could call and they would be there. And that's the same thing for me. They knew that I would come and put down whatever I had going on at the time to help them if they needed. And I wasn't playing around when I showed up on scene. I'm not a big guy, but we're going to make decisions. I believe, in knowing the law and what I'm able to do and not do. And so I think that scared some people because maybe they thought that I knew the law better than they did. And it wasn't anything like that, but it was kind of perfecting your craft. And the Bible
Yeah.
says, whatever thy hand findeth to do it with all your might. And so it doesn't matter what job you are. If you're a preacher, you should be the best preacher, possible for your congregation. If you're a school teacher, you should be the best, most prepared school teacher for your students. When God gave me that role of being a detective, I should be the best detective, and when I'm in that interview room, I need to elicit a confession from this guy so my victim can get justice. And so it was a challenge to me to always get better. And some bad guys made me better too because they were good at what they did. They were a good bad guy. And
Yeah.
I had to find creative ways to get them. But I had told a few of them, hey, we're going to play this game for 20 years. You might win the first 18, but I'm going to get you. And a couple of them have actually gone to prison since I've been here. Some of my buddies have called and said, hey, that guy you worked for all those years and stacking all those cases against him, finally, a judge sent him to prison. And it wasn't during my career, it's been after, but it was just kind of stacking the deck. So, anyway, I would encourage my kids to be like that. You know, you get paid to do a job, do it to the best of your ability, learn what you can in that role until God moves you on to another role. And then when you get there, be humble enough to learn how to do what it is that needs to be done, and then work harder than everybody else.